Laura, how are you?
I'm good. I am ready for this week to end. It's very rainy in New York.
It's gross out, but look, we have a big announcement on the podcast today. Big development. We are really going to take it to the next level and live up to our name and the hype, frankly, for the podcast. We're going to introduce cocktails. We're going to have cocktails together. So this is going to be an essential feature of the podcast. Forward.
Either of us is going to be shocked. We have introduced a Negroni and a Martini into the mix.
Right. So I have a Negroni. This is my signature Peter Rahbar drink.
I have a Martini with lots of olives. That is one of my two signature drinks.
And I would say I prepared this. Cheers. I prepared this myself. And I have my own personalized ice cubes in here and my perfectly weighted glass.
Wait, do you have like round ice cubes?
I prefer square.
Yeah, you do.
So cheers. Cheers to everybody who's watching.
Okay, I just want to say that Jen is evil.
It can be, yes. But in moderation, it's fine.
No, Jen and I had a fight in college. I tried to make up once or twice, and Jen is just like, no, I'm not having it.
You're not the first person I've met who said that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get it out of the way. I think, can we get the obvious zero out of the way first? Because I've had a hard time thinking of anything today other than the shooting outside the Israeli embassy last night and those two gorgeous young in love people who got gunned down by an idiot American, from what I can tell. It's an American, right, that killed them?
Yeah, look, I share, your sadness over this incident and anger. Anti-Semitism is a real problem in the U.S., around the world. It exists on the left. It exists on the right, if you want to put it in political terms. But it is bad. It is, something that we've been fighting for decades or centuries to rid the world of, and now it's making a comeback, which is very unfortunate and dangerous. The government did not ask for identification. They were targeted because they were Jewish.
They asked what their feelings about Gaza and settlements are.
Exactly, and it was at an event to promote peace and bring people from different backgrounds together. So it's a tragedy, and I really hope that we don't have any more tragedies like this.
What do you do? I was watching CNN this morning, as I do, and my girl Kate Baldwin was interviewing the head of the American Jewish Committee. So the woman who was killed worked for him. Like, how are you doing? You must have been up all night. Like, if you are the head of an organization and random violence happens, like, what do? Like, obviously you call your comms and your lawyer first. But what have you ever had this? I mean, hopefully nothing quite this horrible and tragic, but have you ever had a client who had to deal with violence against employees or in the workplace?
Yeah, unfortunately I have. I have advised on, numerous types of violent episodes or tragic episodes. I mean, every employer should have a crisis plan for an emergency situation like this. So you should know, who your local authorities are, the local police, the federal, agencies in the area, attorneys.
One first, right? Like, first thing you do, something's happened. You or someone else calls 911. Then you call your lawyer and your comms person.
An event like this, an incident like this, I mean, you're calling the police, and that's where it starts. And I think what's important for us to talk about is the after, so how do you deal with the aftermath? I mean, the police are going to deal with it. And hopefully also you've trained your employees on safety plans and things like that, and emergency, response, whether it's a fire or other incidents. But you want to know who your local officials are. You obviously want to know who your lawyers and comms people are who can help you out. You want to know who your mental health, counselors and grief counselors could be, to call on the scene, to help, meet with your employees. You want to have a lot of communication with your employees and give them as much support as possible. And also you want to be aware it's going to have lingering issues, ongoing issues that you're going to have to continue to deal with, and be prepared to deal with those after the, emergency.
I think this is a moment where people have to use their discretion to understand when to reach out to the team and be like, hey, if you're having a bad day, I'm here. Or actually could just provide services.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately today, a lot of Jewish-centered organizations are probably sending around memos, not only offering support and consolation, but discussing security procedures, discussing added security procedures. One of the really unfortunate things about being Jewish in this country and attending events at Jewish centers and places of worship is There's always security because it needs to be there because of incidents like this.
I haven't gone to a high holiday service without security guards in 20 years. I mean,
Right.
Security guards are outside. Slight segue. Do you think the reason that we're so deeply messed up is that the Challenger exploded and they told us to go to the next class?
Wow. That's a deep question.
Okay. What grade were you in when the Challenger exploded?
I think like fourth. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
We
that
have
makes
to
sense.
talk about what year.
Six.
I mean, I think what we're seeing now is probably related to COVID and what's happened and how that impacted different groups in different ways and really set off people in different directions.
And X was basically like, yeah, that teacher exploded in space. Where's your homework? Pop quiz. Let yourself in when you get home. And now kids are like, from 3 to 3:02, you will be doing this. From 3:02 to 3:17, you'll be doing that.
Yeah. Well, that was a traumatic event that everyone who was around for it, would never forget. But it was a different time and people handle things differently back then. And, something tragic happened and people rallied around to support each other. And now tragic things happen and people start pointing fingers and trying to figure out who to blame. And everyone's so polarized, even over something that's just so obviously tragic and deserves sympathy and support.
Yes. Okay. We did our zero. Now let's talk about the things people need to know this week. Johnny Ive and Sam Altman seem to be having a bit of a bromance.
I'll drink to that.
Here, if someone paid how many billions of dollars?
6.5.
Two would be affectionate with someone who paid me $6.5 billion. As he's like, just give me so much money.
Kudos to our advanced graphics team.
Like Johnny Ive is looking at Sam Altman without you giving them $6 billion. That is my challenge. Do you think that this is going to... So for anybody who doesn't know, Sam Altman, who is head of OpenAI, which makes ChatGPT, bought I.O., a company that is run by Johnny Ive, who was the designer of the iPhone and many of Apple's innovations. And together, they think they are going to design the game-changing AI hardware, right?
Yes.
They did this video that everyone posted with great reverence about them coming together. And it was just the most like, we are the two smartest white men in the world. And we are called upon to lift up civilization. Do you think that there's going to be like a piece of tech that you think the next revolutionary piece of tech could come out of this will be related, or will be related to AI? I guess is the question.
Well, all indicators would say yes, that it would have something to do with AI. And, this is the culmination of a couple weeks of different pieces of our tech society sort of saying this. From a legal development perspective, Eddie Q of Apple, he's number 2 at Apple, longtime Apple executive, testified in the Google antitrust case that we're probably not going to need mobile phones in a couple of years, and that they're veering away from Google search when they're doing searches and they're just going straight to AI. So we've heard little snippets of how AI is cracking previous, let's say, for sake of this discussion, monopolies like Google search engines and iPhones.
Announced their new I.O. initiative. Basically, people, this week has been brought to you by the letters I and O.
Yeah. So it makes sense. And here OpenAI is taking a big bet, $6.5 billion that I think they said that they're going to make devices that are going to produce $1 trillion worth of revenue. And then they produce some picture of like a hockey puck shaped thing and said it's going to replace phones. And great. So maybe that's it. Maybe it's something else. But it does make sense. But what shows that the premium on talent is still there. Ultimately, OpenAI is an AI company, but they needed to hire a human to design it, right? So So let's not forget that, okay? And let them take their pictures and be bros. That's what they do out there.
Growing is a cause. They're growing for humanity.
Growing for humanity. Exactly.
People, this is what growing for humanity looks like. So we have talked a lot about the fact that hardware that comes from the company is always the property of the company, and any work product you do on that hardware is the property of the company. So if this laptop was owned by an employer, our incredible work product, IP, the company would have access to it. What happens when you have embedded devices? Like what happens when you can go to look online
There's going to be a lot of interesting questions. There already are so many interesting questions that have been thrown into workplaces and onto executives' laps regarding AI. And when I first started talking about AI issues in the workplace a couple of years ago, we talked about some really basic things. What was interesting back then was like no one was really using it. Like the media wanted to make it seem like everybody was using AI, but people weren't. Now it's pretty safe to say that everybody's at least experimented or tried to experiment. And
You know what? I'm going to say 10% of the workforce, all early adopters. I don't think if you don't work in tech or media or anything that touches that it's, I don't know. I feel like you're still like just looking at it skeptical, thinking like, no.
Yeah, I'm just saying, try it out. Like, do a prompt, see what it says, make a cartoon. Okay, so let's say it's somewhere between what you were saying and what I'm saying, okay? More people have tried it. And I think more employers are facing issues, and we've heard from some of them, of employees doing things they weren't expecting with AI or that have gotten their companies in trouble. We've talked about how lawyers have submitted briefs in court with fake cases that they generated on AI. I think this is a good time, and I think it has to be a real regular thing for employers to look at their AI usage policies, remind employees what they can and can't put in AI, because there's huge issues around confidentiality, propriety. I mean, you put something into ChatGPT, it's theirs. You can't pull it back out. Like, it's theirs. So if you put a proprietary work document in there, that's a big problem. Or you put in someone else's IP, that's a big problem. And as these devices evolve, let's see what they are, the policies are going to have to evolve along with them. I doubt an employer would allow an employee to have a device at work that listened to everything going on and just sucked it all in and sent it to Sam Altman.
Okay, but we all know our phones listen to things, and we all have our personal phones in the workplace. So
are you like a conspiracy person? Like
no,
conspiracy theory person?
But I am someone who, like, if I say asphalt, I will probably get an ad for asphalt, which I've not said asphalt in like a year. But like, I bet you now I'll get an ad for like deck paving or something.
Yeah. I can only imagine the ads you've gotten from some of the stuff you've just said on this podcast. I mean, it's really amazing.
So I think one thing that we should like make clear is your lawyer and your comms person say, don't wait until you have your company's first issue with AI to distribute some guidelines for your team. Like, you should be encouraging them to use AI in every legitimate way, because that will only increase the output productivity and probably success of whatever your company does. But it needs to be within guardrails. You need to acknowledge it so you can address it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll dial you back a little bit like I usually do. Every legitimate way is probably not what you want. What you want is every legitimate way that benefits your company. So in addition to having
in the workplace, if it doesn't benefit you.
Right. Of course. Nothing illegitimate happens in the workplace, as we know. I would say in addition to having policies, because that's just like what a lawyer would say, you would want to have constant learning and communication with your employees about how they're using AI and how it could be useful to them and what use cases they would like to see. Having working groups, having committees, having a point person that they could go talk to with.
Exactly. They can use it, because you don't want to hold back productivity. You just want to make sure everything is above board.
Yeah, and I've found over my career that anytime employees want to do something and employers just say no and try and hold them back, employees will find a way to do it. And so you might as well be part of that.
And I think it was like 2006. I was at Meredith, Meredith now, and a woman on our team on the magazine's editorial staff had a secret blog. And that was when it was like a blog. And the whole magazine like went into like uproar. It was something written under a pseudonym, and then it came out this beauty blog was being written by the magazine's beauty editor. And it's so overreacted, to be honest. And I feel like that is the same thing that's probably happening at a lot of companies now. Like, they're overreacting and saying no AI, as the truth is, if you are not going to be using AI effectively, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah, and the studies show there's still, a lot of companies that have been afraid to take that first step and don't know what it is and have been paralyzed by that decision. But every day that goes by, that number's decreasing.
What scares you the most as a person and then as a lawyer about it?
Well, certainly the one concern that I talk about the most is that AI is going to like take over everyone's jobs. I mean, and I've I've seen a lot of different versions of this. Like I sat at a panel where Vinod Khosla is like a known VC legendary investor said that he's taking big bets in AI and he believes people won't have to work in the future. And then we just have to figure out like how we're going to pay people. And I was terrified by that concept because I would imagine that some people would be really taken care of and others wouldn't in that scenario. But I guess I'm not too afraid of that because with every innovation we've had in our lifetimes and before, we've been told that whole swaths of careers would be eliminated, and we found that just other types of jobs are created. And so when I talk to
are eliminated, but new careers rise up in their place.
yeah, exactly. And there was an article this week in the Wall Street Journal, I think, about AI taking over lower level jobs. And my advice to college grads and others at the beginnings of their careers is be an expert in AI in your field because there's plenty of older managers and others who don't know how to use it and are terrified of it, and you can help them and you can be a real asset. I mean, ultimately, AI needs humans to work. So, at least in its current forms, that should be the task for all college kids.
It has not come up at all in what you said.
Well, I mean, I recently saw, a hedge fund investor on CNBC talk about, how he was worried about like, end of the world scenarios. But I was pretty convinced he only said it because he didn't want to talk about this administration's economic policies.
Is that not end of the world?
Some might say that is too.
Some might say. Are you a Terminator guy?
I love the Terminator. As I said, I'm a positive person, Laura.
I need to remember that. Okay, more fun things. Not fun for them, but the CEO of Kohl's got let go, I think, because of a relationship he was having with an executive at Walmart, but Kohl's had made deals with her without anyone knowing that they were a couple. This is messy. I think if you're the CEO of a company.
Yeah, look, this is an incredibly messy situation, which obviously had consequences for the CEO of Kohl's, who's lost his job. And he was directing deals towards his girlfriend's company, which is a coffee company. And people in the company thought it was weird that they were doing these deals with this coffee company. And, they raised issues to the hotline, which is great to hear as an employer that there was routes for employees to raise issues about it. And it eventually came out that these two had a relationship that wasn't disclosed, and it sort of went back to when he was at Walmart and she was at Walmart, and so there was roots. Look, I think if you're an executive of a company, you need to, I think it's important to not have romantic relationships with your employees. But to the extent that there's someone in your industry or someone you're dealing with a vendor, like that should be something that's disclosed, which obviously he didn't do.
Right.
And if you're the CEO, like there's very little wiggle room when you break policies. So here, this was a pretty big one. It was one that a lot of people knew about and led to his demise.
So we've heard in the last couple of years, I think there have been less stories about workplace entanglements because people haven't been in the office as much. It's harder to have lingering looks over the copy machine late night. People still use copy machines if you're not in an office late night. But we just saw a thing today that Gen Z is going back to the workplace 3 days a week. And I think it is very good for young people to be in the workplace 3 days a week. I don't know that anybody needs 5 days a week, I gotta be honest. But 3 days a week, I think it's important to learn, to watch and learn. And I think this is interesting that it's Gen Z that's doing it most. What do you think?
Yeah, it's something I've actually heard a lot about from my clients, and I happen to be discussing a lot this week with some clients as well. The people who are the real leaders in return to office are the youngest generations. Like here in New York, it's because they have small apartments and working at home is not really comfortable, but they're also very social and they like the social aspects of being in the office. And, a lot of the industries in New York, they offer free food and other perks in the offices. So why not be there to take advantage of it?
Did you work at a big corporate law firm right after?
Yeah.
That must have been social.
I mean, lawyers socializing with lawyers, that's so interesting. I was there a lot. I was there like every waking hour I had.
Some of my very closest friends are people I met in my 20s at work because we just were day in, day out together. And I want other people to have that chance. Do you have that close friends from early career?
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, I understand like socializing at work is important. That's actually one of the reasons some people don't like going back to the office is because they just want to do their jobs and they don't want to spend time talking to the person who just does laps around the floor seeing what everybody's doing. But look, that's an important part of development, and it's an important part of bonding and growing your career. And certainly, we all have contacts we made very early on that we've kept, over the years. I get it. The thing that's funny about this story is the whole return to office thing was painted as a problem with young people. Like they don't want to come in; they just want to sit at home and do other jobs or do nothing or whatever.
They were sad and lonely at home.
Yeah, actually, the biggest problem is more with older workers who are very comfortable at home, who hate commuting, who get to spend more time with families because they're more likely to have families at that point.
Bigger homes.
Have bigger homes, more comforts. Like they don't need to go in the office. And so those are the people who really don't want to be in as much.
I believe that. That makes more sense to me. Young people, I get that there's some social anxiety, but I do think young people are realizing it wasn't quite serving them to not go in at all.
Yeah. But if you're starting out in a career, I think it's very important to get as much face time as possible, to be in, to make relationships, to show your commitment to the job in a very visible way that people can understand.
And if you're building a career, you need mentors. And I am a big believer in friend tours. Like your friends, your peers are often your best advisors. Or that's been the case for my lawyer.
Yeah, certainly.
Close friends. Like the girls I came up with, the girls and boys I came up with in Media Land are still the people that you can ask anything because you were day in, day out with them.
Right. And I have a practice, that is comprised of one person, myself, but I have a network of people that I've practiced law with over the years who I consult all the time. And some of them have their own practices. And we, have a group of solo lawyers here in New York who we talk to, or we ping questions off each other. And it's an incredible resource.
Do you have a group chat of solo lawyers?
It's not a group chat. It's a number of different chats.
It's not like, should we bomb Kazakhstan today? Group chat. Not a Pete Hegseth.
No, but I love reading about Pete Hegseth. He's like a content machine.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
He's got jaw could cut glass, and
he's got that terrible wardrobe that he thinks is like so fancy, and it's like so awkward and cheesy. It's great.
So the no tax on tips thing, is that actually happening?
Well, it's on track. It's part of a bill that passed the House.
Is it part of the big, beautiful bill?
I believe so. I mean, this is like just a PR stunt, the no tax on tips. Obviously, it's not something that originated amongst unions or workers. It was a rally gimmick that the president launched during his campaign. And you have so many worker groups talking about how this really actually works against lower income workers. And there's a number of reasons, but one of the main reasons is it's really going to impact and stunt the movement to raise the minimum wage. Which, look, if you're in New York, we have a minimum wage of 16 and change. The federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour.
What are they out to an annual wage?
Like 20 something $1,000. I mean, it's not a lot of money at all. I mean, certainly not something you could live on in New York, and that's why our state has a higher minimum wage. But this is really meant as a diversion from those efforts. I think it's also, the studies have shown it's only going to help, a small percentage of workers who actually are in jobs with tips, because they actually don't make enough money to even be taxed. This is not really an issue for most of them. I think it's also going to lead to some funny business with employers, like doing weird things with tips. I mean, one of the things you have to do is track them. So that now means that employees have to, report all of their tips to the companies, and let's see what happens and what they do with them and how much they keep for themselves and how much they let the employees take. All of it, I saw a tweet from the CEO of Uber today, who's my Persian brother, Laura, but he said it's a huge, huge victory for workers, and I just couldn't disagree more. And I think that's a bunch of BS. It's not a victory for workers.
I guess I disagree with him.
Yeah, it's not.
The CEO of Uber, I might be like, great, tip them more, I'll pay them less. That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And in some states you could pay tipped workers $2 an hour and then let them get the rest in tips. That's not right.
No. All right. I have a really good hero for the week.
Great. Let's hear it. Heroes and zeros. Everybody loves this segment.
Tom Cruise. I saw Mission Impossible last night.
Look at you, such a VIP.
I went to a People magazine screening of Mission Impossible last night, and I love movies where things explode. And much like Bill Simmons and the whole Ringerverse rewatchables team, I love movies where Tom Cruise runs.
I mean,
Like,
he runs in every movie now.
like the knees are so high, the arms are so high, his chin is so high when he's running. This is just good entertainment. And I have to say, usually when you're watching an adventure movie these days, you know everything is green screen CGI. Nothing seems like when you're watching Tom Cruise like dangling from a plane and you know that is actually his crazy self. You're a little bit like, I don't know. I thought it was a really fun movie, and it's fun to see movies in the theater again. And, actual physical effects are great, not just CGI AI effects. That's my favorite. How about you?
Yeah, it's great. I love going to movies also, and it looks like a big movie summer. And I have some Tom Cruise stories I could tell you at another time. My hero, though, we've talked about this topic a lot, but I think this is kind of funny. And maybe just some people think this is funny, but we've talked about the law firms that have capitulated and entered into deals with the administration. I don't know who came up with this name. I saw it on a legal industry blog called Above the Law. Maybe they came up with it. So kudos to them. But we used to call, or we still call, like the top tier law firms white shoe law firms.
Oh, yeah.
And now these nine
White shoe, right?
white shoe. And now these 9 law firms that have entered into deals with the administration are being called orange shoe law firms, which I love. I think it's great. Very clever.
That's hilarious. That's very funny. I like that.
clever.
Very funny. How's your drink, Peter?
It's almost done.
All
It's
right.
delicious.
Want to wish everyone a great Memorial Day weekend. Please send us some questions because Peter's really smart and he has answers. And I hope you enjoyed this drink episode of Across the Bar.
Thanks, Laura. See you next week.
See you next week.